Hi again. I haven't made a video for a while from my darkroom, but I've got a couple of hours today that I can use to print, and I'm going through some pictures I shot maybe a month ago, possibly longer, on a very foggy day up at Beachy Head. Yeah, beginning of February, as part of my Dew Pond project, and I've made some contact sheets. I'm not entirely sure there's much on here that I'm actually going to want to use, but the best way to be sure is to make a print or two. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. And I just thought I'd make a quick video while I'm doing it, in case it's of any interest to anybody, the whole process. Unfortunately, I have some very uneven development on this roll of film, and I'm not 100% sure what happened there. It's the whole roll, and I'm wondering if I've got a problem with the camera. So that kind of limits my choices, because some of these I can tell immediately I have what look like they might be light leaks at the edge of the frame. So that really does limit what is going to be printable, I think. Also, I'm not that wild about foggy pictures. I mean, they're atmospheric, but every foggy picture basically tells the same story. But I'm going to try one of these at least, just to see if I'm being too hard on it. These are shot on 6x45 film. Using a Mamiya 645 camera. This one looks like the best from this roll of film. I've got two rolls of film to look at. Just make sure I get rid of all the dust before we go any further, and then we'll frame this up and see how it looks. So I'm going to shut the curtain that I have covering my door, and then just complete the blacking out process of the room, which involves just blocking a couple of gaps around the door. Of course, you can't see what I'm doing because I don't really have the video set up to move around my darkroom easily with my phone, but never mind. Right, let's turn this light off. Okay. Right, let's see what we've got here. I'm going to be printing these quite small, 5x7. Because these are just quick proof prints, really. Okay. Let's get that framed up a tiny bit higher. I don't mind cropping the very edge of the frame. I am not too fussed about doing that. I try and compose everything in the camera as I want it, but if I have to lose a centimetre or two around the edge of the frame when I print it, that doesn't worry me too much. I used to be very, very fussy about that kind of thing, but less so as I get older. Things creep into the edge of the frame, and you can't notice everything at the time that you take the picture. Well, I try my best. Just frame that up so it's about right. And now I need to just check the focus. That looks good. Now what are we on? We're on F11. I don't tend to make test strips anymore. I do them occasionally. I did do a video a few months ago where I showed how to make a test strip. I do it sometimes, but increasingly I use this little device. It's called a densitometer, and basically it reads values from the negative, and it's pretty accurate once you get used to using it, because you place it basically, essentially you place it on a point on the negative that you know is white or grey, light grey, and a point on the negative where you want black, and it tells you, based on the paper that you're using, what it thinks the exposure should be, and it's not bad. It certainly gives you a reasonable starting point. So I'm going to try that with this. As I say, it was a foggy day, and it's quite hard to do much with these pictures. Whatever I do, they're going to end up looking quite foggy. That's just how it is. Okay. Let's just have a look at what I think we might get away with. I'm going to try 5.66 seconds, which is quite quick, but this is a small enlargement, so the enlarger head is quite close to the baseboard, so you tend to get fairly quick exposures with smaller prints. Just going to get some paper out from my light proof filing cabinet and place it into the paper safe, which is just behind the camera, so you can hear this but you won't be able to see it. These are just little test prints, so this is just on resin coated paper, Ilford resin coated paper. I can't afford to use fibre paper for test prints anymore, unfortunately. It's getting very expensive paper, scarily expensive. Now, although I'm not going to make a test strip, I am going to make a quick test exposure using just a strip of paper. So a test strip, you would make exposures along the strip at a different time, say 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 6 seconds, 8 seconds, etc. And then when you develop it and look at it, you can work out what looks to be the correct exposure. I'm just going to go for this and see what happens. I think I've just remembered to close the lens back down there. Yeah, I have. Okay, let's give it a go, see what happens. Oh no, I've opened the lens up again. That's there's a lever on this lens. Oops. And I've just reopened it. So let me get another strip of paper, because that one clearly isn't going to work. There's a lot of error in the darkroom, a lot of trial and a lot of error. Okay, let's give this a go. So this is going to get 5.66 seconds, and we'll see if that's even remotely where it needs to be. Okay, I'm going to move the camera actually towards the trays, and we'll see. Hopefully you'll be able to see what's going on. It's quite dark, obviously. But let's give it a go. So this gets a minute. Ooh, so I'm throwing things all over the place. I'm a bit tired today. It's possibly a mistake to be doing this. There we go. So I'm going to give that just a minute in the developer. Exactly a minute always. Never adjust that. In my experience, the best thing to do is to always develop for the same time. This is massively overexposed. I can see that immediately. Massively overexposed. So let me shut the lens down a bit more. A couple of stops, I think. Yeah, I can just discard that. It's already gone completely black. This is why I just use strips of paper at this point, because we don't want to waste whole sheets of paper. Right, let's try another one. I'm not going to move the camera around, I'm just going to So exactly what I just did, but I've stopped the lens down. So it has the same time, but it's actually stop and a half less light. Let's see if that works. So back in the developer for a minute. I have a clock immediately at my eye level, and the first thing I do when I put this paper in is look at the clock. That still looks to me like it might be a bit overexposed. I must have metered quite badly on this day. This video is turning into a litany of all of my errors. Generally my exposures are pretty good. I always aim to shoot so that I can make a reasonable print at grade 2 as a kind of basis for experimentation. But I think perhaps on this day the fog, I hadn't really taken account of it properly when I was metering. But we'll see how it looks. It's very hard to tell under red light whether something is correct or not, because red light always makes a print look darker than it actually is, and then when you wash the print after it's dry, it darkens again. So it's actually, you need some experience to work out when you've got something that looks okay when it's wet, that's going to dry down to what you want it to be. So this is in the stop, and this is because this is only a small strip of RC paper, it doesn't need very much time in the stop. With fibre paper I'd have it in the stop for at least a minute, but 30 seconds will do for this. And then into the fix. And again with fibre paper I would normally have it in the fix for at least a minute or two before I turn any lights on. With RC paper and with this little test print, I'm going to turn the light on almost immediately because it'll be okay. Now that's okay, but because it's foggy I can tell immediately it is very grey and quite flat. So I think what I'm going to do is print this at grade 4, which is a much harder contrast level, and I can adjust that on my enlarger. If I move this camera around again, so it's going to get a bit shaky for a minute. This enlarger is a colour enlarger. It has a colour head. So it has 3 different coloured light sources, magenta, yellow and cyan. And you can adjust the contrast of the print when you're printing black and white by adjusting the yellow and the magenta. For a grade 4, 6 yellow, 102 magenta. So let's whack this right up. This will produce much more red light, a much redder light, and also a dimmer light. So I'm also going to adjust the time a tiny bit. Let's adjust this just the tiniest bit. You might be able to see now that this is much redder. No, it would help if I actually had that. Ah, right, okay. My litany of errors continues. I actually had it set to white light from my first exposure. So that was a grade 0 print. So I might have overdone this. I'm going to go for it anyway, because I just feel confident it's going to be fine. I'm just going to go for it with a whole piece of paper, because why not? Okay. It's almost as if I've never done this before. There we go. And this is going to go in the, actually before I do that I'll move the camera over. It's going to go in the developer for a minute, and it'll either look okay or it'll be a disaster. Let's have a look. I feel like you're really seeing my process. It's not normally this error prone, I promise you. I probably shouldn't be doing this today. I'm exhausted. I don't know why I'm so tired. I'm recovering from an illness, that's my excuse. Anyway, so this is grade 4. It will be much, much contrastier. And actually this is looking quite good. The sky, what I really hate in black and white photography, in my particular style of black and white photography, is too much grey, really. I mean, I like mid-tone tonality where it should be there, but on foggy days often everything is just grey, one of the nice things about the darkroom, and of course you can do this in Photoshop as well if you're a digital photographer, is how you can adjust the scene to your image of what it should have been. I try not to do that too much, but I'm not precious about it. If a picture is improved by printing it at a harder grade, so it doesn't actually quite look like your memory of how it was at the time, but if the picture is better because of that, I don't actually think that's the end of the world. Some people would disagree. I think this is going to be quite nice, actually. So let's get this out of the fix. Sorry, out of the stock and into the fix. And I'm going to give it a little bit longer in the fix before I turn the lights on, because this might be a print that I want to have a proper look at. So I'll make sure it's properly fixed before I turn the light on. So RC paper, this paper, resin coated paper, basically has a thin layer of emulsion on the surface. It's a kind of plasticated surface, and the emulsion sits on that surface rather than embedded in the fibres of the paper, and that means it needs less time and less chemistry, and it's just a bit easier to work with. It also has a different look. It is not, the quality of the paper stock is not as good as fibre paper, and the results don't look quite as good, but it's, for this kind of simple work print, it does the job. Okay, let's have a look at that. I'm really happy with that, It has a lovely silvery softness to it because it's grade 4, and what's happened is that the fog has kind of added to that silvery tonality of the overall image. I'm actually really quite pleased with that. Let's try and get a little bit closer without dropping the camera in the fixer. Yeah, not bad. I'm going to give that a couple more minutes in the fix and then have a look at the rest of the roll of film and see if I can get anything else out of it. But I'm actually really happy with that.